My name's Edward Collins, but the whole town calls me Ed. I'm 63, retired from the auto parts plant off Reading Road in Cincinnati, Ohio. I've always been proud of two things: working hard and keeping receipts. Not out of stinginess, out of habit. My father, a mechanic who read invoices the way other folks read the morning paper, drilled it into me with the same stubbornness he used to push a dead car up a hill. Write down what you give and what you get, not to collect, so you remember, he'd say, lighting another cigarette I couldn't stand. I wrote it down. For decades. Brown envelopes, dated and creased, packed into a metal box in the basement. I just didn't know that box would climb the stairs on Father's Day. Father's Day morning, Sunday, mid-June, just after 8. The coffee was dripping slow, that wet paper filter smell in the air. Light slid through the blinds and painted the table in stripes. My phone buzzed. From Brandon. Subject line: final envelope, our wedding. I opened it. A fancy PDF, logo of the Harborfront Pavilion in Charleston, South Carolina. Their dream wedding. At the top, in cool black letters, balance due, father of the groom's share, $80,000. Under that, a note from my son, 32. Dad, this is what's left for you. Madison and her parents already covered their part. It's fair. Can you wire it by Friday? I read it, then read it again. The coffee went cold. I hadn't been invited to the rehearsal dinner, just for the young folks. And on the day they put me at table 14, work friends on the groom's side, even though I've been retired 2 years. Mary, my partner of 4 years, was discouraged from coming because the list was maxed out. I swallowed it. I'd already paid what they asked before the big day, just under $8,000 for the DJ and photographer, and I tucked an extra grand into a simple card. And now, $80,000. 8 with 4 zeros. I wrote back, "Can we talk?" Silence. A few hours later, another email. "Dad, I know you have it. You've always been responsible. Don't make this hard. It's just your share." The word share kept tapping against the kitchen tiles. Share of what? A budget I didn't approve? Promises I didn't make? I felt the anger that doesn't explode, the kind that cools. I pictured Brandon at 8, Little League knee pads at Riverside Park, crying because 2 grounders slid right through his legs. I knelt in the dirt, smeared my jeans, and said, "Son, we mess up so we learn to hold the bat. We don't throw the bat at other people." Now, in 2024, he was chucking an $80,000 bat at me and calling it a share. That Monday morning, June 17th, I headed down to the basement. The yellow bulb flickered twice. I dragged the metal box to the workbench. Blue pen labels. Brandon, 92 through 2015, school, health, sports, car, college. The metal scraped across the wood. I opened it. Smell of old paper, rusty staples biting the corners. The Good Samaritan hospital bill from the day he was born. March 15th, 1992. Just under $3,000 after insurance. Diapers from Kroger over 3 years. A little over $3,000, with my handwriting rounding it out in the corner. Doctor. Haskins 2005 braces, about $5,700, spread across a dozen payments. The used 2009 Honda Civic, so the kid could get to class and back, about $6,300, plus roughly $1,500 for a year of insurance. Baseball fees, bats, and travel. I added it up one day and wrote, about $1,800, $2,000 to '06. Tuition. He didn't go straight to a university, started at community, then transferred to the University of Cincinnati. After FAFSA, my checks came to a little over $23,000. 8 months of rent in 2016 when he got laid off. Just under $5,000. The phone plan in my name for 7 years. Started around $35 a month, drifted up to $50. Call it around $4,000. And 2 dozen payments of $400 on a student loan I took over, just shy of $10,000. There was more. Emergency gas, a tire change. A 3 in the morning tow when he dinged the Civic on I-71. A slip for not quite $200 that still smelled like the clerk's coffee. The first laptop tough backpack, about $80. It was all there. It wasn't about charging. It was about remembering. That afternoon, I sat at my old Dell, hinge squeaking, and started typing. Line by line, date, description, amount. I added it up carefully, like a watchmaker, this plus that, column after column. The total slid past 100 grand. I stopped, breathed. When it reached about 167,000 and change, I felt a strange kind of tired. The same tired you get sanding a door until your arm trembles. I printed it, picked up a black pen, wrote across the top, balance due from Brandon Collins, 0, paid by Dad. I knew it would sting on both sides, but I also knew if I wired the 80 grand and swallowed it, I'd be buying a piece that only looks pretty on Instagram. If you've ever been handed an invoice disguised as a share, stick with me. What I did next was the moment I stopped acting like a cash drawer and started being a father again. If this were a channel, I'd tell you. This is where you hit follow. The plant I worked in has a smell that never left my hands. Cutting oil and ground metal. Eversource manufacturing. 4 decades of lathes, burrs, and talk with men who measure life in shifts. The 6 a.m. whistle still rings in my head when I wake up without an alarm. I was good at what I did. Measure in thousandths, calibrate, hold out my palm for the shavings, know by the sound if the piece was right. Some people live by words. We lived by noise. At the house on Ridge Avenue, the calendar on the fridge was marked up in blue pen with our bills. My father used to say, you get 2 choices, live in control or be controlled. I chose the kind of control that doesn't hurt. Know what came in, know what went out. Keep the paper like it was a photograph. And they were photographs. The hospital bill from the day Brandon was born. I remember the cold room, the cry that cut the air, the watery coffee at 4 in the morning. The diaper total, more than 3 grand over 3 years, wasn't just a number. It was the sweet sour smell that stuck in the living room and my clumsy way of learning to change him without wrecking the carpet. Those braces from Dr. Haskins weren't just about 5,700 in 05. They were Brandon dragging himself home saying, the guys call me Grill, and me telling him, you'll laugh last and you'll chew better than all of them. The used 2009 Civic 6300 was him looking at me like I'd put wheels on the sky. The 1,500 insurance felt outrageous then. Now it seems cheap for the freedom it bought his head. You measure love by what you give and what you hold. In 2016, when the layoff hit, I held 8 months of rent at $600 a month, just under 5 grand. I remember the couch smelling like Linda's lasagna and cheap wine, and Brandon saying, just 3 more months, Dad, I promise. The phone plan, around 4 grand over 7 years, irritated me so many times I could have pitched that iPhone out the window. I didn't. I paid the student loan for 2 years, just under 10 grand. I said, no need to thank me every month, just show me. Some months he showed me. Other months he chose not to look. Mary arrived in 2020, when I thought the world was about to shrink to the size of our living rooms forever. She's a nurse, smells like plain soap and strong coffee. When Brandon started dating Madison in 2021, Mary said, she's pretty smart, just take care. I laughed. Take care of what? Of you turning into a dishcloth. When they announced the wedding, Charleston destination, ocean breeze, top shelf open bar, I asked, what's the budget? Brandon said, Maddie's family is all in. You help with the rest. Linda looked at me the way she's looked since '99, like I'm a talking safe. I said, I can swing about 10 grand if you keep it sensible. I paid the bits they asked for before the big day, just under 8 for the DJ and photographer, plus a simple card with another grand. I went to the wedding. Charleston carries a wind off the water that smells like salt and oyster sauce. They put me at table 14. I looked at Mary in the hotel mirror while I wrestled with the old tie she loves out of pure stubborn affection and said, it'll be beautiful anyway. She didn't go. Madison said the guest list was maxed. Mary's look said, I get it, but I don't like it. The day after the wedding, I texted, congratulations, beautiful. I got a heart and a gallery link. A week later, I went fishing with Mr. Donnelly, my widower neighbor, out at East Fork Lake, and my line snapped twice. I laughed. He said, weak line doesn't land big fish. I pocketed that line. 2 days later, the 80 grand PDF hit my inbox. When I read, "It's your share," I felt my patience stretch like fishing line until it snapped. The metal box climbed the stairs. Sorting the receipts was like sweeping a house of memories. Paper carries a smell when a life's been honest. At the bottom of the box, I found a disciplinary note from Brandon's school for copying homework back in '07. My signature on it, a little crooked. Punishment was enough. I smiled. I also found the promissory note we signed at the bank in September of 2022. 20 grand for the condo down payment in Oakley. 2 signatures, 1 witness. Clause: due on demand, 60 days notice. I'd forgotten it. It hadn't forgotten me. As I wrapped up the spreadsheet on the old Dell, the hinge squeaking like a church door, I felt the peace you get from tedious work. The tally came to about $167,000 and some change, and I wrote, "Balance due, 0, paid by Dad." That paid was a hug I gave myself. I didn't want to humiliate anyone. I wanted to remind a son that a father isn't a party partner. A father is bedrock, and bedrock doesn't send invoices, but it doesn't accept being billed for whims either. That night I texted Brandon, "Pepper Pod Diner tomorrow around 9? He wrote back, "Okay." I had no idea that a Formica table and a cup of black coffee were about to watch my heart break and straighten, all in the same morning. Tuesday, June 18th. Pepper Pod Diner in Covington, across the river. Chrome counter, scuffed mugs, that bacon and pancake smell that clings to your jacket. I got there about 15 minutes early, like always. The wall clock was just past 9 when Brandon walked in. Light blue dress shirt, too much gel, the quick stride of someone who thinks the world owes him a hurry. "Happy belated Father's Day," I said, more manners than need. "Yeah." He didn't look at me. "What's that?" He pointed at the manila envelope by my elbow. "It's my share," I said. "The receipts." He cracked it open like it bored him and flipped fast. Birth, braces, car, tuition, rent, phone, loan. His hand slowed. The server set down my black coffee and his latte. "Dad, this is ridiculous," he said, half laughing. "This is basic parenting. You're itemizing my, upbringing." "I'm remembering," I said without raising my voice. "Because you forgot. The wedding was about 160 grand, he hissed, angry whisper. 80 is your half. Madison's family already paid their 80. Mom said you'd cover the rest. It's fair. Linda's got that old talent for promising my wallet." I looked out the window. A truck rolled by, a lazy American flag flapping off the tail. "I told you back in January, at the IHOP on Red Bank, I could help with about 10 grand if you kept it sensible. I paid for the DJ and the photographer, just under 8, and I tucked another grand into a simple card. You two chose Charleston, a top-shelf open bar, flowers that only bloom in June in the Netherlands, and a 6-piece band. I didn't choose it. I didn't sign it. I'm not a co-author on your harborfront contract." "You have it," he insisted. "Your house is paid off. You retired early. You've always been responsible. Don't make this hard." "Know why the house is paid off?" I asked, slow. "Because I spent 41 years waking up at 5, pulling doubles, fixing lathes while you slept. I don't owe a dime on your wedding." He shoved the envelope like it burned. The chair scraped the floor and a few heads turned. "So it's a no. You're going to make me look bad with her family. Madison's dad, Keith, said if you don't cover it, they'll think I'm a failure." "You care more about what Keith thinks than about what's decent," I said even. "And there's something else." I slid a paper from my wallet. The promissory note, 20 grand, September of 2022, condo down payment. Put it on the table, square to the corner. "I'm formally calling it due. Consider yourself notified today. You've got 60 days. His eyes went wide. "You wouldn't." "I just did." I took a sip of coffee. "One more thing. The phone plan in my name ends at the end of the month. Starting in July, that bill is yours. And I've stopped paying on your student loan. I helped for years. When you dinged the Civic on I-71, I answered the tow at 3 in the morning. I'm not an ATM. He stood. The latte sat there, half full. The server took a step back. You just ended our relationship. I looked at the coffee ring my mug left on the Formica. Brandon, you cracked it when you sent me a bill on Father's Day. I only sent the receipts. He left. I stayed. The check was a little over $7. I left $3 for the tip. I walked out with the envelope under my arm and the feeling that the world had shifted its focus for me, from guilt to boundaries. Wednesday, the 19th, the calls started. First Linda, have you lost your mind? How dare you? I hung up. Then Madison. That was humiliating. My father saw it. He says you're a small man. By afternoon, Keith himself called, voice like a too-tight tie. Edward, this is Keith Rockwell. I'm a numbers man. I don't like drama. What you did, it's unbecoming. What you did was send me the invoice for your event like I was a partner, I said. That's unbecoming. Be that as it may, we need your share. We've made commitments. So have I. To my dignity. I hung up and did something else. I prepped a thick manila envelope, certified mail. Inside the revised spreadsheet, a handful of key receipts, birth, braces, car, tuition, rent, phone, loan, and a one-page letter. Subject, your share. Brandon, growing up costs. I paid with money, time, and my back. You sending me an invoice on Father's Day was a wound I didn't deserve. Enclosed are receipts for part of what I've covered to date, about $167,000 and change. Balance I owe toward your wedding, $0. Balance you owe on the promissory note from September 2022, $20 grand, due in 60 days. I don't owe you a cent. I gave you a lifetime. Dad. I dropped it at the post office late afternoon, a little after 4. By nightfall, half a dozen missed calls. Close to 11, around 14. By morning, the total was pushing 20. I put my phone on airplane mode and walked Alt Park. Fresh-cut grass, sprinklers throwing rainbows. Mary found me on the wooden bench by the rose garden and said only this, "You did the right thing." I wanted to believe it. Friday night, I got an invite that smelled like a setup. Dinner at Linda's to resolve. Sunday, Anderson Township. I went. I didn't know that dinner would give me the turn I needed and open a window for a counterpunch I never planned, but through like flipping a switch and watching the light jump to my side. Sunday, June 23rd. Linda's house smelled like vanilla candles and nerves. Fresh wedding photos in silver frames lined the sideboard. Madison with a magazine smile. Brandon in a suit a little too tight. The harbor front in the background. Out on the deck, Brandon stood with his arms crossed. Madison's eyes were wet but hard. Linda wore that look of hysterical calm. Keith and Cheryl held their wine glasses like shields. "Let's get right to it," Keith said, sliding a sheet onto the table. "Here's the breakdown. About $160,000. Half is yours." "No," I said. My share was raising Brandon to here. I covered what I promised. I sent the receipts. "Receipts?" Linda exploded. "Who bills their own child?" "No one billed anyone," I said softly. "I remembered because you forgot." Madison slapped the paper. "It was our day, our dream. This isn't about money." "If it isn't about money, why is my name on a bill?" I asked. Silence. The truth pressed in on the walls. Cheryl, who'd done nothing but breathe till then, spoke up. She swirled her glass, stared into it like the answer might be in the wine. "Ed, I saw your letter. It was firm. Maybe we got carried away thinking you'd cover it. I asked for expensive things. June peonies, a 6-piece band, a premium bar. I overdid it." Keith looked at her, surprised by the concession. Brandon bounced his leg, wounded. I looked at him the way I used to when I tightened his bike chain and he was afraid to get his hands dirty. "Son, I love you. I've been your father in good and in hard. You turned me into a revenue line to plug a party hole. That's not family. Family invites the father to the rehearsal. Family saves a seat for the father's partner. Family doesn't send a bill on Father's Day." He stared at the table. Linda cried the kind of cry I've known since '99. Madison breathed, "I'm sorry about the rehearsal list." I nodded. I wasn't there to be soothed. And the promissory note? Brandon ventured. Are you really going to? I am, I said. Not for revenge, for respect. When you show respect, we can talk about renegotiating. The conversation died like a candle snuffed by a draft. I left without dessert. Monday, June 24th, I went to the credit union and filed the demand on the note. Ron, the manager who's known me for years, filled out the forms calmly, his pen tapping the counter. 60 days, he said. 60, I echoed. Then I swung by UPS and scanned everything. Mary's always telling me to keep a copy in the cloud. Now I had one. On the way back, I bought a little pack of screws at Ace, just under $5, and finally fixed that silly kitchen cabinet that had been dragging for weeks. Tightening a screw gave me back the sense that some things really are in our hands. I didn't know if I was winning. I only knew I'd turned the key. From fearing I'd look tight-fisted to being proud, I could hold firm. What I didn't expect came 2 days later. The cheapest, ugliest attempt to shame me in public, and how it snapped back on the ones who lit the match. Wednesday, June 26th, a little after 10 in the morning. Mary sent me a screenshot. Facebook. Keith's profile, a black and white photo of him dancing with his daughter, captioned, "Some fathers give everything for their kids. Others disappear when it's time to do their part. Sad to see." Comments lined up like bottles on a shelf. What a shame. So disappointing. Pricey, but love is worth it. One of Cheryl's cousins wrote, "If he were mine, I'd cut him off. No names. Didn't need any." I took a breath. I had two choices, answer with poison or with paper. I picked paper. I opened my email. Subject, about your part. Recipients, Brandon, Madison, Linda, Keith, Cheryl. CC, Pastor Reed from the church Brandon grew up in. Aunt Paula, Linda's sister, the one who's always been a bridge, and yes, Mary. I attached the PDF of my spreadsheet, a few numbers blurred for privacy, but the substance clear. 3 emblematic receipts, birth, braces, tuition, the proof for the DJ photographer, just under $8,000, a screenshot of the $80,000 invoice, and my letter. I wrote it calmly. Family, I'm not a Facebook guy. I'm a paper guy. Someone posted that some fathers disappear when it's time to do their part. I never disappeared. Here's a summary, about $167,000 and change, of things I paid out of love and duty. Health, school, a car, rent when work fell through, the phone, the student loan. For the wedding, I helped exactly as promised, just under $8,000 plus another $1,000 as a gift. The $80,000 bill wasn't my commitment. I didn't sign any hotel contract. Being a father doesn't make me the automatic guarantor of someone else's dream. If you've got questions, call me. If you want to talk, my kitchen table is open. If you want to shame me in a post, sorry, I only work with receipts. I hit send around 10:30. Not even 15 minutes later, Aunt Paula replied, "Ed, thanks for the clarity. That was unfair to you. Before 11, Pastor Reed, I'll preach Sunday on honoring father and mother with balance, no names, you know." A little past noon, from Keith. "Edward, I'm sorry if my post was interpreted." I stopped at if. Conditional apologies aren't apologies. A little after 1, Brandon called. I let it ring. He left a message. "Dad, take that down. This is exposed." I thought about all the times I'd been exposed by disrespect and no one took anything down. Late afternoon, I got a formal email from Harborfront Pavilion, signed Accounts Receivable. Friendly reminder of outstanding balance for event number X. Payer, family of the groom. That was the missing piece. I answered in 2 lines. "I'm not a party to your contract. Remove my email from your records. CC, counsel for my credit union." And I attached a short cease and desist template Ron keeps handy for members who get leaned on by mistake. That night, my back fence neighbor, Mrs. McAllister, who sees everything from her deck, called over the fence. "Ed, saw the post, saw your reply. Good on you, honey." She's never called me honey in her life. I laughed to myself. Our small world has its own press too. Word of mouth, church hallways, family group chats. If someone tried to paint me as an absent father, the paint ran. Saturday, June 29th, at the church picnic, pastor preached on honor your father and mother. No names, didn't need any. Brandon didn't show. Linda kept to a corner, laughing too loud. Mary cut watermelon with the patience of an overnight nurse. Mr. Donnelly brought a dry tilapia and said, "Strong line, Ed." I toasted with lemonade. The next Monday, another email, this time from Cheryl. "Ed, I unliked Keith's post. He took it down. I want to apologize. I got carried away. I was thoughtless." I breathed. "Thank you for raising the Brandon I love," she added. I waited 10 minutes, then replied, "Thanks for seeing it." Seeing is half the work. The other half I knew had to come from my son. The 60-day clock on the promissory note kept ticking. Back on June 17th, I'd marked the calendar. Notice delivered. 60 days. Every day I drew a red X, not as a threat, as discipline. I didn't know if he'd show up with an envelope. I only knew that, for the first time in a long time, I wasn't at the mercy of someone else's share. What landed on day 59, I didn't expect, at least not the way it landed. Friday, August 16th, 2024, the second to last day. I was on the porch on Ridge Avenue watering a stubborn geranium Mary refuses to give up on, when I saw Brandon pull up. T-shirt, scruff, shoulders tired. He took the 3 steps slow, the way you climb when you're about to ask forgiveness without a speech prepared. "It's not all of it," he said before he sat. 12 grand, I sold the bike, and... He looked at the floor. "I worked out a plan with the bank for the rest. Can I pay you over 4 months?" I opened the envelope. Checks from Fifth Third, staggered dates. My hands felt light. It's one thing to win. It's another to watch someone learn without you having to crush them. "Come in, son. Let's have some coffee." The kitchen sounded the way I like it. Water rolling to a boil, a spoon ticking the porcelain. Mary waved and gave us space. Brandon fussed with a cracked tile by the sink, just like when he was a kid, about to confess he'd broken his mother's vase. "I was an idiot," he said at last. "The pressure, Instagram, Maddie's family. I thought that split was normal. I forgot everything you gave. Seeing that folder, it hurt, but it opened my eyes. I was ashamed." "You don't have to humiliate yourself to learn," I said, "but sometimes the world charges interest." He laughed a little, ashamed of himself, the best kind of shame. Table 14 was the planner's policy, and the thing with Mary was on me. I was afraid Mom would get upset. I was a coward. "Cowardice gets cured with courage," I said. "Do you want to fix it?" "I do." "Start with apologies. To Mary, to me, and to yourself for selling out to status." He nodded. That night he texted Mary, plain, sincere, no emojis. On Saturday he showed up with a simple bouquet from Findlay Market. Sunflowers and daisies, no imported peonies. And we ate spaghetti and meatballs while the Reds lost by a run. Some traditions don't need a receipt. In September he paid off the rest of the note. I wrote "paid" in blue ink, the way my father would have, and put the paper in his hand with a hug that lasted exactly as long as it needed to. In October, I got a card from Madison. "Ed, I'm sorry. You were right. Thank you for raising the Brandon I love. Lunch? We went to Skyline Chili. I let her pay. The world turns, and some turns taste like cinnamon and heat. I learned a few things, too. I went to Mr. Lawson's office, an old lawyer up in Wyoming, and updated my will. I added a simple clause: inheritance tied to respect and truth. The house doesn't change hands because of emotional blackmail. And I wrote a rule that sounds hard but is just clear. No expense over $1,000 in my name without my signature. Ever again. Not mistrust. Hygiene. Thanksgiving. Thursday, November 28th, 2024. Felt different. Mary sat beside me. Brandon put me at the head of the table, right by the turkey. No speeches with half, share, or fair in them. There was Brandon's pumpkin pie, a lovable disaster, and a toast with cider. Nobody over-photographed. Nobody posted a subtweet. I looked at my son and saw the 8-year-old learning to hold the bat without throwing it at anyone. If you're wondering how I slept after all this, here's the truth. I slept with the window open, listening to the city that's held me up. Truck rattle, a siren far off. The metal box went back to the basement, but now it has a sister, a digital folder in the cloud, everything scanned, named, organized. I stuck a yellow post-it on the fridge in my crooked hand. A father isn't a bank. Father is a home. A home doesn't send a bill, and it doesn't accept being billed for someone else's party. Keith never apologized to my face, but his post vanished. Cheryl showed up one afternoon with brownies and said softly, "Thank you for not answering with hate." Linda. Linda is still Linda, and that's her problem, not mine. Brandon, the way he calls me, did change. Now he starts with, "Dad, how are you?" Sometimes he asks without needing anything after. That's a small miracle. I learned something my old man would have scribbled on a shop rag napkin. Sending receipts isn't revenge. It's a mirror. It doesn't return money. It returns memory. And well-kept memory earns respect. I didn't ask for a cent back from the paper in that box. I asked for the right not to be treated like sponsorship. What I got slowly were installments of humility, with a little interest in affection. If Brandon has a child someday and the world tries to turn love into a revenue line, maybe he'll head down to his own basement, open a box, and find a sheet in blue pen. Paid. Maybe he'll remember me at the Pepper Pod diner, scuffed mug in hand, saying, "I only sent the receipts." Maybe he'll understand that boundaries aren't walls, they're fences that keep the herd together and the wolf out. And if he's unsure, he can call me. I'll pick up. Just don't send me a bill. Because I'll answer with a manila envelope, and inside it will be the same message, the same way, in the same ink. Balance due, 0, paid by Dad. Subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts about the story in the comments. See you in the next one.